Right, well, we are continuing our breaking news coverage that's coming out of Israel because police and the army say that at least one person has been killed and 5 others injured in a shooting incident. And this has happened at multiple locations in central Israel. Now, the shootings have happened at locations in the town of Kochav Yair, that's near occupied West Bank, and it's specifically near the separation wall. Now, the Israeli army and police say that 2 suspects have been shot and killed. Emergency teams are treating several injured people. People in the area have been told to stay indoors. Nida Ibrahim is our correspondent live for us from Yitma, that's near Nablus in occupied West Bank. Obviously, this is an evolving story here, Nida. Can you bring us up to speed with what we know so far?
So according to the Israeli police, 2 people have been neutralized and they are believed to be the perpetrators of an attack that left 1 Israeli killed and 6 others injured. According to the Israeli ambulance, they've been seeing and noticing these casualties happening in 4 different locations. What we believe has happened is someone was inside a car and the other person was shooting towards Israelis in the area inside Israel. That's again very close to the Israeli separation wall, very close to the Israeli town of Qalqilya, where we are getting reports from people there saying that all entrances and exits to Qalqilya have been closed. Now, it's not clear whether they are looking for more people who have been assisting, maybe aiding these attackers, but at the same time, the Israelis do not waste an opportunity to make life for Palestinians more complicated by imposing more and more restrictions when it comes to Palestinians' right to movement. When we talk about the people who are believed to have been neutralized, that's the term the Israelis use to refer to people who they've no longer able to pose a threat to Israelis. We are talking about a potential man being from a town inside Israel, a Palestinian Israeli citizen. And according to the Israeli channel 12, the Israeli forces have already raided the family's home inside the town of At-Taiba inside Israel and trying to conduct more and more investigations. Itamar Ben-Gvir, the national security minister, has been saying that these people need to be punished, need to be facing the death penalty. But as we remind our viewers time and again that the Israelis, with their extrajudicial policy against Palestinians, do not need to wait for the due process after they passed a recent law that instills capital punishment only on Palestinians and not on Israelis, even those Israelis that the Israeli government itself considers and names as terrorists, namely these Israeli settlers who have been killing and attacking Palestinians. And here it's interesting to see the comparison between these attackers, but also between Yenon Levy, an Israeli settler near Masafer Yatta in the southern occupied West Bank, who killed an activist a few years ago, and he is still on the loose. Yes, he's faced sanctions by some countries, including the UK, but at the same time, there has been no accountability whatsoever for the Israelis. So that's just a reminder of how the Israeli system treats Palestinians versus how it treats Israelis. Now we are seeing Israeli settlers gathering at the Yatzhar junction. That's a junction close to where we are right now. Usually they do that to prepare to attack Palestinian cars, Palestinian vehicles. And we've seen plenty of these vengeful campaigns by Israeli settlers against Palestinians following attacks. But also they happen without these attacks whatsoever, because just yesterday groups of settlers have raided the town of Hawara, again very close to where we are standing right now. They've attacked homes, and it's a painful reminder of the pogrom that took place a few years ago. And I remember you, Sarah, were there on the scene reporting on it and showing how the Israeli settlers continue to complicate lives for Palestinians. And in the end, these settlers who have attacked Palestinians have been ordered to a few days of house arrest before they were released.
Yeah, I remember that very clearly, covering that, the both of us. And of course, no one is immune to that settler violence. I will get back to that in a moment. Let's go back, though, to this latest attack. What can you tell us, Nida, about this town? It's in central Israel, from my understanding, Kochav Yair. Could you perhaps give us an idea of what that area is and what's there?
Well, we have to remember that we as Palestinians need Israeli military checkpoints to be able to enter inside Israel. So if you ask me, I wouldn't be able to give you an idea of how the town looks like, but I can tell you what it looks like from the other side of the wall, which is where the Palestinians are, which is an area called Qalqilya, very close to Israel's separation wall that has been inching closer and closer into Palestinian lands and Palestinian territory. But also we are talking about the illegal Israeli settlements that have been growing in the area. Because of the nature of the Israeli separation wall, the Israeli fences, the Israeli restrictions, roadblocks, as well as the military checkpoints, we've been seeing less and less attacks against Israelis that have originated from the occupied West Bank. So the belief is amongst the Israeli security establishment now is that the perpetrator is an Israeli who holds an is a Palestinian who holds an Israeli citizenship who has conducted this attack. But that does not mean that the Israeli forces are not going to complicate life in the villages of Qalqilya and the surrounding areas. And we've seen how, while the manhunt seems to be over, at least because the second person has been apprehended, these checkpoints have been closed, leading in and out to Qalqilya. Now, the attack itself we still do not know a lot about the details of it, but we think it was a traveling car, a man was driving, the other person was shooting, and that probably explains why the Israeli ambulance has dealt with casualties and injuries in several locations. So we believe the car was traveling, was moving, and the other person was shooting towards Israelis there.
All right, Nida, stay with us because I also want to speak to Alon Pinkas, a former Israeli diplomat, joining us live now from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for speaking to us here at Al Jazeera. Information is still coming in. What we do know is that there are a total of 3 people killed. It seems 2 of them were the two suspects killed by Israeli forces, and also an Israeli has been killed, it seems, so a total of 3 so far. Alon, what's the view from where you are? And you are in Israel, so perhaps you can enlighten us on this location where the shootings have been taking place.
Okay, the shooting, Sarah, was in Kochav Yair and Tzur Yitzchak. These are 2 towns, small town, relatively small towns, sleep towns, if you will, that are basically on the green line. They're on the seam line between Israel and the West Bank. It is 35 kilometers roughly from Tel Aviv. It is 2 or 3 kilometers from the city of Kfar Saba. It is even closer to the Arab town, Palestinian Arab town within Israel of Taibe, where reportedly the perpetrator came from. And even though it borders the West Bank, it seems that the perpetrator, again, based on the scant information that we have now, came from within Israel rather than from the West Bank. So it would be interesting, and I say this in a weird way because it's not interesting, it's tragic, what the vindictive and vengeful settlers have in mind, because this was within the Green Line.
Right, and why do you believe this mention of settlers keeps coming up? We know that those settler attacks have increased hugely, certainly since the current government came into power, with the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, himself pushing forward this idea of settlers taking over more of the West Bank. Same with the finance minister, a settler himself from a settler family. Why are we seeing more of these attacks, and what is the connection there?
Well, you just answered your own question, Sarah. Some elements within the settler population, have become the armed militia empowered by the government. You call it Minister Ben-Gvir, yeah. he's a fascist thug. But it's not about him. It's about the Benjamin Netanyahu-led government that allows this to go on in the West Bank. So the moment they become some kind of, a vendetta type of militia, it is assumed that they will try and retaliate or in retribution elsewhere, which includes within the Green Line. That is why they are mentioned. I doubt it would happen, but on the other hand, I would not be surprised, Sarah, if it does. But because this is within the Green Line, there is a huge contingent of police and border police and military. And so I doubt they could do anything. But, give it 2 or 3 days and they will take their revenge in some Palestinian village in the West Bank. So this is an endless tragic cycle.
As Nida Ibrahim, our correspondent, was just explaining that she is starting to see those Israeli settlers gather. They move almost like mobs, don't they? Now, in terms of going back to the location, you said that it's near the Green Line. Of course, that's the 1949 Armistice border. It was a demarcation line that was set out in 1949. Of course, for those that have never been, it's very difficult for people to understand how Palestinians aren't able, for example, to enter some of those Israeli towns. Can you explain to us what is there and what you see if you are a Palestinian, why you can't go through them?
Well, if you're a Palestinian who lives in the West Bank, supposedly you need permits to go into Israeli towns or villages or cities inside the Green Line, meaning going west, even 1 kilometer, even 500 meters. And Kochav Yair, where this took place, or near Kochav Yair, where this took place, is right next to a relatively big Palestinian city of Qalqilya. But as I said before, and as you reported correctly before, Sarah, the perpetrator, or the two perpetrators, appeared to have come from the town, big town, by the way, almost 40 or 50,000 people, of Taibe, which is within the Green Line, which is part of the 2 million Palestinians living inside Israel, constituting 20% of the Israeli population. So Palestinians living inside Israel, Sarah, are free to go anywhere. I see them every day in Tel Aviv and no problem whatsoever. So for them to walk the 1 kilometer or less to a junction or to a road or to a neighborhood in Kochav Yair or through Igal, where this took place, is both legal and unhindered.
All right, Alon, do stay with us. I want to go back to Nida Ibrahim, our correspondent, who is live for us in Yitma. That's near Nablus, which is in occupied West Bank. Now, we know that these attacks have happened near the separation wall, which you mentioned earlier. Perhaps you can enlighten those that are not familiar with what the separation wall is, how it's expanded over the years. And it's not just a physical barrier. It means so much more for Palestinians, certainly those in the West Bank that are not able to get past that wall.
Yes, it's a death trap. We've reported just in the past few days how many Palestinians who are desperate to find work try to climb up the separation wall, which is in some places as high as 11 meters. And they try and get into Israel to find work when the Israeli forces shoot and kill them, including a 28-year-old from Nablus who could not find anything. The last money he got was $5, but he wanted to make a living when he was shot. But not only that, the main purpose of the wall, while the Israelis claim it is security, we still see these attacks happening. So it's not really security as much as it's about expanding the territory of Israel by adding more and more lands. Yes, the wall was built in the year 2002 after the wake of the second Palestinian uprising or intifada, but it has been expanding to areas from within the occupied occupied West Bank itself. You have homes that are stuck in between what we call the seam zone, the areas where there are people who do not have any access or any ability to go to their lands. They cannot go to their homes. They cannot go to plant their trees. All of that has been happening regarding Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. So the separation wall has been complicating more and more life more and more for Palestinians. But let me just, for the sake of the big story, remind our viewers that while the Israelis are talking about an attack, are talking about an attack that is based on nationalistic motives, there hasn't been a 100% confirmation by the Israelis that 100% this has been an attack by Palestinians against Israelis. Now, the treatment of the case is 90% that's the case. They're saying that there are more and more, they're believing more and more that it is indeed an attack based on what they call nationalistic motives, but they're still investigating to see if there has been or there might be a criminal aspect to this attack.
All right, stay with us, Nida. Alon Pinkas, I wanted to read out a statement to you. It seems basically Hamas has said that this shooting, it says, okay, hold on. Recent shooting operations near Israeli settlements, framing them as responses to Israeli military actions and policies in Gaza, the West Bank and Jerusalem. And Hamas has also warned that continued Israeli policies would escalate resistance and called on the international community to intervene and stop what it described as aggression. Would you say that's a fair assessment there?
Well, I don't know, Sarah, that this necessarily is true. I mean, Hamas taking credit for this or Hamas backing this and implying that they were involved, I have no way to determine the veracity. I understand why they're doing it. I don't know that it's necessarily accurate. But let's open the lens, as goes the saying, and look at it in a broader perspective. Ever since the war in Gaza, that began on the 7th of October 2023 with the Hamas terror attack, and until now, you have seen an increase in settler violence. You've seen an increase in military violence in the West Bank. And even though, as we said before, Sarah, the perpetrators came from Taiba, which is within the Green Line, which is part of Israel, de facto and de jure, it would be foolish for someone not to think that these attacks would happen. Luckily, fortunately, we've all avoided these attacks until now. But the idea that the settlers are doing with some kind of military looking the other way, turning on their heads when this happens, violence against Palestinians would not be met with Palestinian terrorism, that would be naive and stupid. And so this happened. I just hope it's an isolated incident rather than leading to something much bigger. Because, you know, we've all been concentrating, Sarah, on Iran and Lebanon, and to a lesser extent in the last few months on Gaza. Yep. But the West Bank is a cauldron. The West Bank is extraordinarily explosive because of no political process, no negotiations. Hamas is taking a stronghold there, and settler violence. So, you know, this is tragic. This is horrible, but it's not. It wasn't unexpected or unpredictable.
Right, as you said, you know, while the focus has been on Iran, many are forgetting what's happening in the West Bank. Thank you very much, Alon Pinkas, there, a former Israeli diplomat, joining us live now from Tel Aviv.